You just delivered a beautiful keynote speech. And during the speech, you talked about your first time to Mauritius. Apparently, your first time, or the reason what brought you here to Mauritius for the first time, was a client you had in Kenya for a case. And at that time, you mentioned you hadn't even heard of the mark. Fast forward to today, how has your perception changed of not only Mauritius, but the mark as well?
Yes. I think I had a lot of positive perceptions before I came to Mauritius, and to a large extent they remain the same. But I think the more I'm coming to visit, the more I realize that there are some similar challenges we're facing in Mauritius and mainland Africa. I mentioned the topic of corruption. There's been some political instability, and in a way it sounds strange, but it's comforting to know that a country as well developed as Mauritius still shares some of the same teething problems that we still have in Kenya and in the rest of Africa. I find that encouraging rather than discouraging, because I feel like we can aspire to develop and to grow. We can get there. Nothing is perfect. We've seen that in the United States and the United Kingdom. You can never eliminate political uncertainty. But yes, I think we have it all to aim for. So I'm quite encouraged.
Great. So I have another question. There's a lot of excitement with foreign direct investment into Africa, but you talked about the need to balance that, excitement and investment with, some key things that need to be covered or considered,
yes,
so that it's beneficial for not just the investor, but also for the countries of Africa. Can you talk about what those things were?
Yeah, right. I think some of the things I mentioned was my concern about the debt burden, the debt trap. So countries that may be over borrowing and essentially mortgaging the future generations to be repaying this debt. Is it sustainable? And then I mentioned some environmental concerns, because a lot of large infrastructure projects may be occurring in areas which are quite sensitive ecologically, and we need to protect our heritage as Africans. We are a tourist destination, many of us, and we need to protect our wildlife and our ecosystem. I mentioned social development and human rights. Often people say there's a trade-off and you have to choose between economic development and social development. I actually think that is a false choice. I think it's very hard to have sustainable economic development without human rights. I think China is a very good example of this, where it's reached a certain point in its economy, and now I think the political class is realizing that without giving a little bit more in terms of freedom and individual choice, they're not going to be able to sustain that growth. So I think it's a false choice, and I think we should choose both. They're both good.
Well, great. Thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you, Tara.